Hey everyone, I hope you've all had a good day. I've been very busy myself playing PE, but I think this is a really good time now to all come together and just talk about some posing and some really important issues that we're all facing today as teachers. We are having an increasing number of students with ASD entering in our classrooms. So what I'm about to now present to you is actually really crucial to ensuring that we are furthering our testimony of what it is to be a teacher and to take care of our students. What can we do to better support these students that are entering our classrooms that have different learning requirements? So I'm obviously talking about autism spectrum disorders. That's something that I know I've personally experienced in my classroom, and I know that that's something that we are all experiencing within our variety of classrooms in our school. So I'm specifically talking about level 1 autism. There's 3 different levels. I'm going to talk about them a bit later, but I'm particularly focusing upon level 1. So enjoy. I've included this statistic sheet because I think it presents some really interesting statistics. It's also a really good beginning discussion point. If you note the first statistic, it says 58% of students with ASD would like teachers to understand what it is. Secondly, 46% would like the class to be less noisy. And I think that we can all say as teachers we'd also love it if it was less noisy as well. And the rest would like their pupils to actually understand what exactly it is, which I think is completely fair. These 3 points we obviously have control over. They're things that we can work on as teachers and enforce in our classroom. But that first one, students want us to know more about what it is and how we can better support them. And I think that's really what I want to be focusing on today. How can we better support? How can we better promote learning for these students? So I've included this picture of an umbrella, which essentially covers what like autism spectrum disorders may be associated with. So we used to have Asperger's syndrome. Recently in 2013, it's actually changed now to level 1 autism. So lots of students with Asperger's syndrome are now being recognised and diagnosed as level 1 autistic students, maybe even stemming into level 2, but we primarily find level 1, which is often referred to as requiring support. So in earlier times, Asperger's was actually recognised as a standalone condition, and nowadays they're all recognised under this lovely banner, autism spectrum disorders. So today, autism spectrum disorders are distinguished by the severity of the disorders, and the severity is basically characterised by the social communication impairments and restricted repetitive patterns of behaviour. And the criteria used to diagnose the level of ASD includes level 1, which is requiring support, as I said. Then we've got level 2, which is requiring substantial support. And then level 3 is requiring very substantial support. So this next diagram I've actually included just to sort of give a bit of a breakdown of the disorders. We're actually going to talk about them a little bit later, but just getting you to sort of have a look at level 1, it's just basically talking about, how you can, I guess, identify it within your classroom. But just to sort of further break down, what is autism and how do children with level 1 autism, how do they experience these social communication difficulties, and what are the repetitive restrictive patterns of behaviour that they experience? How do they actually impact our classrooms and impact the students themselves? They tend to experience lots of difficulty with social interactions, with change, spontaneous change. They can deal with that change as long as it's, presented in a manner that's going to be supported. They don't feel that it's rapid or spontaneous. They also have a lot of difficulty with focus and attention. Making sure that they stay on task is often very difficult, especially if they're not interested in the work that they're doing. often you can't get them to stop working on what they're doing, if it's something that they enjoy. But they tend to possess a really great focus on certain skills or certain topics that they have. So yeah, just to sort of look at what characterizes autism. I'm not sure if you can read that there, but I'll just really quickly break it down for you. Tony Attwood, and he's an English psychologist. He's written a number of resource papers and books concerning Asperger's syndrome, as I was saying before, how that's linked to level 1 autism. And he's just basically said that they have delayed social skills and maturity. They often can be alienated by peers and struggle to make friends. They tend to find it difficult to communicate and control their feelings and emotions. They have an unusual array of learning abilities. We've all experienced that in our classes. They have a tendency to be a bit more pedantic and sensitive to sounds. As I was saying, they find classrooms a bit, loud, a bit noisy. They tend to have a fascination with the topic. You're all probably nodding because you can think of someone or understand. And they sometimes can be a bit clumsy. So, for example, I've just come back from teaching PE, and some students just struggle with certain skills, like their fine motor skills struggle a little bit more. So just have a look at what causes autism spectrum disorders. It's a bit of a difficult one because it's not yet been determined. We have an idea of possible, proposed possibilities of what causes it, but we haven't actually determined what exactly causes ASD. So we have presented that a combination of genetic and environmental factors can maybe cause changes in brain development early on. It could be hereditary, genetic. I think that probably, you probably have students, in your classes that have it within their family. Environmental factors early in a pregnancy possibly, and brain abnormalities. So I guess we're having a bit of a thought of, okay, so we're understanding what it is, what it looks like in our class, having a bit of thoughts now, students in our classroom, but let's have a look at what can we do as teachers. I've included this really awesome video in this. It's basically they have a Sesame Street character who now has autism. I can't remember her name, but it's really interesting how they've introduced this as a way to, I guess, create better understanding in younger children. So I'll just let you have a bit of a watch.
Let's sing together. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder. If somebody has a limited verbal ability from autism or from something else, we kind of can't help it, but we automatically assume that they know less, or that they certainly can show us less about what they know. Bubbles? Bubbles? I'm trying, but, blowing doesn't always work. Teachers need to understand that their kids probably know a lot more than they can show. And if you take the assumption that your students are competent and eager to learn, want to learn, if you work from that assumption, the students are going to do a lot better in your classroom. Thanks for that tip, Julia. You were a big help. One of the mistakes that teachers and kids both make with autism is assuming that if the student with autism isn't able to answer you immediately, or doesn't make eye contact, or follow you around in the playground, that they don't want to play, or they don't want to be friends. And so peers and teachers sometimes just give up and leave the child with autism alone. Oh, hi, Julia. You seem excited. What's going on? Play. Oh, you want to play? Well, sure. What should we play? Kickball? Okay, maybe not. Well, how about So if the peers understand, oh, she does want to play with you, she just doesn't know how. Or you might want to wait a little longer for her to answer before you run off and do your own thing. That is active teaching of acceptance and is good not only for the kid with autism, but also for their peers.
It's okay. Sometimes friends like different things, so it can be hard to figure out what to play together.
Some young kids may be very sensitive to sound. Some kids with autism are very sensitive to having too many people in their room. They might cover their ears or not be able to speak in front of a lot of people. If you have a student that's experiencing some overload, the first thing to do is to ask the student what might help.
So what should we do next? Asks Elmo. Snack, says Julia. So the three friends go to Hooper's store. But inside Hooper's store, Julia seems scared. She claps her hands over her ears.
Often teachers will have a little beanbag chair that's maybe under a large table, so you're kind of blocking the lights and some of the sound, and the student can kind of take a break.
So I have included this video obviously because I think she's summarized what I want to say in essence, and she's presented some strategies. I've included a few examples also too on that handout that I've given you. She's basically just presented some really great strategies that I guess we can employ, whether the child is younger, whether the child is older, not treating them as though they're dumb. We're not treating them as though they haven't got the capacity to think for themselves. We're giving them the opportunity to speak. We're listening. We're giving them the opportunity to express what they need to express, whether it's concerning social anxieties, whether it's concerning work, like task-related questions. Also, and I've actually included here basically saying that we need to give students the opportunity so that, you know, they can have control, and better control, I should actually say, better control over setting their goals, setting learning challenges. They know where they're at. Obviously, it's specific to a child, whether, you know, we're dealing with someone who's in year 10 compared to someone that's in year 3. They're obviously going to have probably a better awareness where they're in year 10. It also depends upon where the student is at themselves. And I've just basically said here, these differences affect them and their work, and we basically need to ensure that we understand, and we're not presenting these students with a task that they're not going to be able to achieve. We're not going to get frustrated that they don't understand. We need that patience. We need that understanding. So just to be really quick, because she actually beautifully summarized it for me, just some examples of ways that, you know, some strategies, I guess, that we can deal when implications arise from students struggling with their tasks. I think a really good example is, and I've written it down in these notes, is basically making sure that we have the students involved in setting their learning goals. We are keeping the parents involved, and I'll actually talk about that a little bit later. But we keeping like a daily diary so that parents know what's going on at home, whether parents or carers. The student knows where they're at, what's required of them next. They have clear set goals, clear set guidelines, not rules, but in some cases some rules. But when it's more homework and task related, we have set instructions. We go, okay, so this is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3. They know where they're going, they have direction, they have an understanding, whether we have to explain it once, twice, 1,000 times over, as long as the student's getting it. Also too, changing the environment is a big one. Whether if we were talking before, if students are finding it too loud, they cover their ears, or as she was saying earlier in the videos, basically saying if they're finding it too bright, too full on, we're creating we're cultivating an environment in which this student feels that they can blossom and that they can learn. And then also too, making sure, as I said, the explanations, and we're giving them, like, maybe I've actually got it here, an access card where we can maybe have like a digital card or an actual physical card in which this student can carry around or has attached to their profile. We're using Central at the moment, which is really great, and we could actually attach that access card in the roles saying like this student has specific learning requirements, especially for our casuals walking in. It's really important that that student has the opportunity for the teacher, whether it's regular or a new teacher, that teacher walking in isn't going to be overwhelmed with going, what do I do? Like, didn't even realize that this student in my class has this disability, and they have this requirement of learning. It's like giving them an alternative. Here you go, here's another pass, whether it's working on the computer. They're allowed to use their device once they've completed the required task, like a reward system. Just creating an alternative path. So social issues that these students may experience, there's a lot. It's a social, the disability is characterized by its social nature. They experience lots of bullying. They can experience lots of just ignorance, like students just purely not understand, their peers purely not understanding the condition. So what can we do to prevent that? And I think that's a really important part, is prevention. Let's prevent that bullying. Let's prevent that ignorance. Let's prevent them from being excluded or isolated in a manner that they aren't able to communicate with the other students. We could set up like a buddy system. I think education, and I've written that there, that is the primary focus. Educate the other peers, educate the students in the class. Let them know this is what the student needs. This is how the student copes. This is, like, we're all human. Our students, we're only going to be enabling them to be better citizens if we can present them with opportunities to cultivate environments to take care of one another now. They'll walk out being better people at the end of the day. And then obviously, what can we do as parents and teachers working together? And I've got a few points here, basically just to involve the parents. As I said earlier, we could have that diary running, which is really important. We need open communication, an open door policy, regular phone calls, regular emails, making sure at the beginning of the year, so early on every term, wherever it is, we have that open door policy of, okay, let's establish the students' goals. Let's establish the students, what do they want to achieve in the year? But let's do that with the student present. Now, obviously, that will depend upon the students' maturity levels, the age, whether it's appropriate. But it's really great if we can actually encourage that student to come in and be a part of this class. Be a part of the process in creating this positive learning environment for them. And then some resources. I've just basically tried to paraphrase a lot of it in sort of a manner that's a little bit, I guess, quicker, because the beauty of online is you can honestly find something within the matter of a few seconds. So I've just popped a few of these in here that I thought are really great. We had Lizard Center, which was a really great one. We've got a few, I guess, what are they, like unit plans that are alternative for students with ASD. Really great resources for parents, and they're excellent. There's a surplus of resources for parents with children with ASD. It's excellent. And there's lots of also online facilities for teachers as well, making sure that we're taking care of our teachers, taking care of our own. So I've included a lot in this presentation. A lot can be found in that handout that I've given you. I've included all the references in the handout too, because of course I wouldn't have been able to do this presentation without all of that research. The quotes that I've included, I think everything is absolutely essential, and I think it presents a really interesting and important focus upon what can we do as teachers to enhance the learning of our students. So I hope that I've given you a bit of a bite-sized chunk of what we can better do as teachers. If you have any questions, please feel free to talk to me about it in greater detail. I love to discuss it with you. I'm also happy for people to come and speak to me about any possible recommendations or suggestions. It's about the students. Let's have a student-focused approach with everything. They are the future, and we need to make sure that we're enhancing that learning and enhancing this portion of their life that we get to actually have a place in. So thank you. I've enjoyed speaking to you today, and please let me know if there's anything else. Thanks.